Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm pleased to welcome you to a lesson of the Esoteric High School, the spiritual high school, like it was given by Rudolf Steiner 1924 in German, and this now is in translation into English. And in the beginning, to start, I will say the foundation stone meditation, which is some kind of meditation as a foundation stone for the Anthroposophical Society and the spiritual high school. And after the lesson today we will work on the repetition lesson number 1. I will say the Michael imagination, first in English and then in German. Soul of man, you live in the limbs that carry you through the world of space into the sea of spirit being. Practice spirit remembrance in the soul depths, where in the prevailing world creator being, your own I, in the God I, become being, and you will truly live in the human world being, because it prevails the Father Spirit of the heights, creating being in the world depth. Seraphim, cherubim throne, let resound from the heights what echoes in the depths, and what in the echo of the deep, the secret of the heights sounded again. This speaks ex Deo nascimur. This are hearing the elemental spirits in the east, in the west, in the north, in the south. May man hear it. Soul of man, you live in the heart-lung beat, which guides you through the rhythms of time into your own soul being feeling. Practice spirit contemplation in soul equanimity, where the serving word occur deeds your own I to the world's I unite, and you will truly feel in human soul deeds, because it prevails the Christ will in the vicinity, in the rhythms of the world soul blessing. Through the Spirit's curiotetis dynamis exousiae, let from the east inflame what through the west takes shape, and the fire of the east that receives its shape from the west, it speaks in Christo moremur. This are hearing the elemental spirits in the east, west, north, south. May man hear it. Soul of man, you live in the reposing head, that for eternity reasons, the world thoughts opened up. Practice spirit viewing in peace of mind, where the eternal targets of the gods, worlds being light, the own eye, for its free will gives, and you will truly think in human spiritual basis, because it prevails the spirit world thoughts, in the world being, light invoking, archai archangeloi, angeloi, let from the depth demand, what will be grand in the heights, and if it is understood correctly, as it sounds from archai archangeloi, angeloi, when requested from the depths, what can be grand in the heights, then it speaks through the world, per spiritum sanctum revivissimus. This are hearing the elemental spirits in the east, west, north, south. May man hear it. In the turn of time, occur the world's spirit light, into the earthly stream of beings, night, darkness, had ended its prevail, the brightest light streamed into human souls, light that warms the poor shepherd hearts, light that enlightens the wise king's heads, divine light, Christ's Son, warm our hearts, enlighten our heads, though that good will be what we through our hearts rise, what we through our heads purposefully want to lead. From the esoteric lessons for the first class of the Free School for Spiritual Science, given through Rudolf Steiner, the repetition lesson number 1, from the 6th of September 1924. My dear friends, as it turns out, many more friends have come to this class lesson, and probably will not to the next lesson as well, who had not attended the previous one, so it would be impossible to simply continue in the same way as we have with the previous lessons. But it is also true that a repetition of these class lessons will not be a disadvantage for those members of the esoteric school who participated in the earlier lessons, because the content of this esoteric school is such that it works again and again on the souls. Therefore, for those who today are experiencing a repetition, it also constitutes a continuation. But for all those who are here for the first time, it means something else. It means an acquaintance with the beginning of the esoteric path. And even those who are far advanced on the esoteric path see in it the advantage of their continued striving. In that again and again they return to the beginning. This return to the beginning is always also the endeavor to reach a more advanced stage. We should therefore consider this lesson of today in that sense, and so for the members of the school who are here for the first time, the meaning of the school must be explained beforehand. As the impulse of the Christmas conference, with the spiritual laying of the foundation stone of the Anthroposophical Society took place in this hall, from now on an esoteric breath is to flow through the whole Anthroposophic Society. As I said yesterday, an esoteric breath that can already be noted in everything undertaken within the Anthroposophical Society since Christmas. The nucleus of the esoteric activity of the Anthroposophical Society must be the esoteric school. This esoteric school, coming from the entire character of the Anthroposophy, is to take the place of what has been previously attempted as the so-called free school for spiritual science, which cannot exactly be described as having been successful. It was at the time when I did not yet personally have the leadership of the Anthroposophical Society, and thus had to entrust those who wanted to try something to let them try. In the future, this cannot continue. The intention of what has formed together with me as the Christmas impulse was that the free school for spiritual science, with its various sections, would form an esoteric nucleus for all the esoteric work in the Anthroposophical Society. An esoteric school, however, is not founded as an earthly entity. An esoteric school can only be one if it is the earthly reflection of what has been founded in the supersensible world, in the higher spiritual worlds. And it has often been declared among anthroposophists that in the succession of the reigning hierarchy of archangels, those who reign over human spiritual life, the Archangel Michael took over this guardians during the last third of the 19th century. And it was made now that his guidance has a very special significance for the spiritual life and evolution of humanity on earth. It is the case that in human evolution, life is guided successfully by 7 archangels, who together comprise the spiritual ruling substance of the planetary system, to which the sun, earth and moon also belong. The impulse of one of these archangels lasts about 3 or 4 to 4 centuries, and when we consider the archangels under whose impulse the spiritual life of the present stands, when we consider Michael, we have the Archangelos who possesses the spiritual force of the sun in everything he does and supports. previously again lasting for 3 to 4 centuries, that is, from the last third of the 19th century back through 3 to 4 centuries, was the reign of the Archangelos Gabriel, who mostly bears the moon's forces in his impulses. And going further back, we come to the centuries in which a kind of revolution against spiritual activities and spiritual being in humanity took place during the Middle Ages, even by those who were the bearers of the civilization, the reign of Samuel, who had his impulses in the Mars forces. When we go even further back, we come to the era in which a medicinally oriented alchemy deeply influenced spiritual life under the rule of the Archangelos Raphael, who bears the Mercury forces in his impulses. And when we go even further back, we are approaching more and more the mystery of Golgotha, but have not yet reached it. We find there the reign of Zachariel, who he bears the Jupiter forces in his impulses, and the reign of Anael, with whom we are getting very close to the mystery of Golgotha, who bears the Venus forces in his impulses. Then we come to the time when the brilliance of the mystery of Golgotha asserted itself against a profound spiritual darkness on earth. Under the reign of Oriphiel, who bears the Saturn forces in his impulses. Then we come back to the previous reign of Michael, that coincides with the great international cosmopolitan impulses through Alexander the Great and Aristotle, which until that point was brought to humanity by means of the Greek mysteries and spirituality, and was then brought by Alexander over to Asia, to North Africa, so that what was the spiritual life of a small territory streamed out to the whole civilized world of those times. For it is always an attribute of a Michael area that what had previously blossomed in one place streams out to other locations in a cosmopolitan manner. Those, after having completed the cycle of the successive Archangelo epochs, we always return to the same Archangelo. We can go back further again through the succession of Gabriel, Samuel, Raphael, Zachariel, Anael, Oriphiel, and would come again to Michael. And we would find that after the Michael era streams over us, an Oriphiel era follows. So, my dear friends, we should be aware that the Michael impulse lives in the way characterized in everything which is spiritual activity and being in the present. But it is a more important Michael era than the previous ones. I would like to emphasize this. Then, when the Anthroposophical Society was placed at the service of the esoteric during the Christmas conference, its esoteric nucleus, this esoteric school, could only be founded by the spiritual power which is incumbent for its guidance at these times. that we are in this esoteric school as one which the spirit of the times himself, Michael, has founded, for it is the Michael school of the present. And only then, my dear friends, can you correctly understand what is being said here, when you are aware that nothing else is being said but what the Michael stream itself wishes to bring to humanity in the present time. All the words which will be spoken in this school are Michael words. Michael is all that is willed in this school. You are all students of Michael, in that you are present in the right way in this school. Only then, when you are aware of this, is it possible to be present in this school in the right way, with the correct disposition and attitude, feeling yourself to be member not only of what enters the world as an earthly institution, but as a heavenly institution. It is, of course, therefore, a condition that every member of the school accept certain self-evident responsibility. It is a property of the Christmas impulse of the Anthroposophical Society that it has taken on the characteristic of complete openness. Therefore, nothing is demanded of members of the Anthroposophical Society other than what they themselves demand, that they receive through the Anthroposophical Society what flows within the Anthroposophical spiritual movement. One does not take on further responsibility when one becomes an anthroposophist. The responsibility for being a decent person is taken for granted. It is otherwise when one seeks to enter this school. Then, based on the truly occult spirit of this school, the member assumes the responsibility of being a worthy representative of anthroposophy before the world, with all his thinking, feeling and willing. One cannot otherwise be a member of this school. That this is taken seriously, my dear friends, can be seen by the fact that since the short existence of this school, in 20 instances temporary expulsions have already taken place. This strict measure will have to continue to be followed in the same way. One cannot play around with true esoteric matters. They must be realized with utmost earnestness. In the way through this school, the earnestness that is absolutely necessary for the anthroposophical movement to spiritual prosper can stream into it. That is what I wanted to say as an introduction. I'm speaking now to those of you who are here for the first time, if you receive the words spoken here as a real message from the spiritual world, as truly Michael words, then you will be here in the right way, in the only way you should be here. And so now we want to bring to our souls the words which resound to the human being when he objectively observes everything in the world that surrounds him, in the world above, in the middle and below. Let us look to the mute kingdom of minerals, to the sprouting plant kingdom, at the mobile animal kingdom, at the thinking kingdom of humanity on earth. Let us direct our gaze to the mountains, to the seas, to the rivers, to the effervescent springs, to the shining sun, to the gleaming moon and the sparkling stars. If the human being keeps his heart open, if he can listen with the ears of soul, the admonishment resounds to him which is contained in the words which I shall now speak. O man, know yourself. So resounds the word. You hear it, soul powerful. You feel it, spirit vastness. Who speaks so word fastly? Who speaks so felt heartily? Does it act through space, distant radiation, in your senses being experience? Does it sound through times, wave weaves into your life's evolving stream? Is it you yourself who in space feeling, in experiencing time, creating the world, feeling foreign, sensing in space's emptiness of soul, because you have the force of thinking, losing in the time-destroying stream? And when we let the meaning and the spirit of these words work in us, then we feel the desire to go into the springs from which our true humanity flows. To really understand these words means to crave the path that leads to those waters from which the human soul flows, to seek the source of human life. In seeking, my dear sisters and brothers, you will be rewarded to the extent it lies in your karma. But the first step will be to understand the inner meaning of the esoteric path. The esoteric path will be described in Michael words here in this school. It will be described in such a way that everyone can follow it, but not that everyone must follow it, rather that it be understood, for such understanding is in itself the first step. Therefore, that Michael has to say, a present-day humanity will flow in mantric words. These mantric words will at the same time be words for meditation. Again, I will depend on karma, who these words for meditation work, how these words for meditation work for each individual. And the first thing is to understand that from the spoken words about human self-knowledge, the desire arises to direct one's attention to the sources of human existence. O man, know yourself. Yes, this desire must awaken. We must seek where are the sources of what lives in the human soul, what our humanity actually is. At first, we must observe the surroundings that have been given us. We must look around at all the little things we have been given, at all the great things we have been given. We observe the nude stone, the worm in the earth. We look at all that grows and exists and lives around us in the kingdom of the depths of nature. We look up to the powerfully glittering stars. We listen to the turbulent thunder. It is not by being ascetic, that we can solve the riddle of our own humanity. It is not by despising the earthworm, the stars glittering in space, not by despising them as outer sensible phenomena and instead seeking an abstractly chaotic buzz, but when we develop a feeling for the transcendence of what shines down on us from the stars, for all that enters through the senses and becomes our perception, beauty, truth, purity, transcendence, magnificence, and majesty. When you can stand there as an observer of all that surrounds you, of the plants, of the stones, of the animals, of the stars, of the clouds, of the seas, of the springs, of the mountains, and can absorb their majesty and greatness and truth and beauty and radiance, then can you first say with complete intensity, yes, great and powerful and majestic and glorious are the worm that crawl under the earth, the stars that glitter above in heaven's space, but your being, O man, is not among them. You are not in what your senses reveal to you. And then we direct our questioning gaze, laden with rails, to the far distance. From here on, the esoteric path will be described in imaginations. We direct our gaze to the distance. Something like a path is shown, a path that leads to a black, night-cloaked wall that reveals itself at the beginning of deepest darkness. And we stand there surrounded by the majesty of sensory perception, marveling at the greatness, majesty, and radiance of sensory perception, but not finding our own being in it, with our gaze directed to the limits of sensory perception. But black, night-cloaked darkness begins there, but something in our heart tells us, not here where the sun reflects its light from all that grows and moves and lives, but there where black night-cloaked darkness is staring at us, are the sources of our own humanity. From out of there, the answer must come to the question, O man, know yourself. Then we go hesitating towards the black darkness and become aware that the first being who confronts us stands where the black night-cloaked darkness begins. Like a previously unseen cloud formation taking shape, it becomes human-like, not whited, but by gravity, but human-like nevertheless. With earnest, very earnest gaze, it meets our questioning gaze. It is the guardian of the threshold. For between the sun-radiating surroundings of humanity and that night-cloaked darkness, there is an abyss, a deep, yawning abyss. The guardian of the threshold stands before us on this side of the abyss. We call him this for the following reason. Oh, every night while sleeping the human being with his eye and with the astral body is in that world that with imaginative gaze now appears as black, night-cloaked darkness, but he does not realize it. His soul senses have not opened. He does not realize that he lives and acts among spiritual beings and spiritual facts between falling asleep and awakening, were he to consciously experience without further preparation what there is to experience there, he would be crushed. The guardian of the threshold protects us. Therefore he is the guardian of the threshold, protects us against crossing the abyss unprepared. We must follow his admonitions if we wish to tread the esoteric path. He encloses the human being in darkness every night. He guards the threshold so that the human being does not, when falling asleep, enter into the spiritual occult world unprepared. Now he stands there. If we have sufficiently internalized our hearts and delved deeply into our souls, there he is admonishing us as to how everything is beautiful in our surroundings, but that in this beauty we cannot find our own being, and that we must seek beyond the yawning abyss of existence in the realms of night-cloaked black darkness, that we must wait until it becomes dark here, in the sunlit, radiant realm of sensory light, and it becomes light for us there, where now there is still only darkness. That is what the guardian of the threshold reveals to our souls. We are still at a certain distance from him. We look at him and perceive his admonishing words still from a distance, which resounds so. Where on earthly ground, color on color, life is manifest in creation, where from earthly matter, form on form, the lifeless is given shape, where sentient beings strong in will warms themselves in joy of existence, where you, O man, your bodily being derived from earth and air and light, there your true being enters deep night enveloped cold darkness. You ask in the dark sweeping expanse no longer who you are and where and will be. For your own being the day grows dimly, to the soul's night, to spirit darkness. And you turn the angst of soul towards the light that from darkness streams. That is the guardian of the threshold's first admonishment, the earnest admonishment that tells us that our surroundings are beautiful and grand and sublime, radiant with light sun-filled, but that thus radiant sun-filled world is for the human being the true darkness, that we must seek there in the darkness, that the darkness becomes light, so that humanity, illuminated from out of the darkness, can approach us, so that the riddle of humanity may be solved from out of the darkness. The guardian of the threshold continues, and out of the darkness brightens. The human being is at rest. and out of darkness brightens, your likeness manifesting you, but to the parable also forming you, earnest spirit words in world ether, heard by your heart, acting powerful. To you, the spirit messenger, who alone can light for you the way. Before him the fields of sense widen, behind him yawn the abyss depth, and before his dark spirit fields, hard by the yawning abyss of being, there his elemental creator word sounds, behold, I am the only gate to knowledge. The guardian speaks, life is manifest in creation, where from earthly matter form on form the lifeless is given shape, where sentient beings strong in will warm themselves in joy of existence, where you, O man, your bodily being derived from earth and air and light, there your true being enters, deep night enveloped cold darkness. You ask in the dark sweeping expanse no longer who you are and where and will be. For your own being the day grows dimly, to the soul's night, to spirit darkness. And you turn with angst of soul toward the light that from darkness streams. It has been written on board. The continuation of this phrase follows after a few lines. What comes now is an intermediate close. And out of the darkness brights, your likeness manifesting you, but to the parable also forming you, earnest spirit words in world ether, heard by your heart, acting powerful. To you, the spirit messenger, who alone can light you the way, before him the fields of sense widen, behind him yawn the abyss depth, and before his dark spirit fields, hard by the yawning abyss of being, there his elemental creator word resounds, behold, I am the only gate to knowledge. Has been written on board. For it is the guardian himself who once he has imparted to us this first admonishment, to feel light as darkness, darkness as light, indicates the feelings and sensation which can come ascendantly potent from our souls. He speaks them aloud, thus the guardian, as his gaze becomes even more earnest, as he stretches out his arm and hand to us, he speaks further these words. The guardian speaks. From the far reaches of space beings who experience existence in light, we feel ourselves impelled to take a few steps closer to the guardian. From the stages of course of time, which finds expression in creating, from the depths of heartfelt feeling, here in the self, the world is fathomad. There is sound in the speech of soul, there enlightened by spiritual thoughts, that from divine healing powers, in the world shaping powers, the undulating existential words, O man, know yourself. It is different if we first hear these words from sensory being, and if we correctly understand the words which resound, O man, know yourself, or if they now resound before the terrible abyss of existence from the mouth of the guardian of the threshold himself. The same words, two different ways to grasp them. These words are mantric for meditation. They are words which awaken the capacity in the soul to come near to the spiritual world, if they are able to ignite the soul. And now the mantra will be written on the blackboard. The guardian at the abyss, from the far reaches of space beings who experience existence in light from the stages of course of time, which finds expression in creating, from the depths of heartfelt feeling, here in the self of world in face you met, there is sound in the speech of the soul, there enlightened spiritual thoughts, that from the divine healing powers, in the world shaping powers, the undulating existential words, O man, know yourself. While the guardian is saying these words, he hath moved close to the yawning abyss of being. It is deep, there is no hope of crossing the abyss with the feet given us by the earth. We need freedom from earthly gravity. We need the wings of spiritual life in order to cross over the abyss. By it first beckoning us to the yawning abyss of existence, the guardian of the threshold made us aware of how ourselves, before being illuminated and purified for the spiritual world, where actually today we are everywhere surrounded by hate for the spiritual world, by mockery of the spiritual world, by cowardice and fear of the spiritual world. The guardian makes us aware of how this, ourself, which wills and feels and thinks, is constituted today in our present evolutionary cycle in its threefold character of willing, feeling and thinking. We must first recognize this before we can become aware in real self-knowledge of our true self, which is implanted in us by the gods. All three beasts, which arise from the abyss, one after the other, appear to us as seen from the viewpoint of eternal divine force of healing. Human willing, human feeling, human thinking, as they appear one after the other, willing, feeling, thinking in their true form, the guardian explained them. We are standing at the edge of the abyss, the guardian speaks, the beasts rise up. But you must beware of the abyss, otherwise its beasts will devour you if you pass by me in haste. Your cosmic age has placed them there in view as enemies of knowledge. Behold the first beast, the crooked back, the bony head, the scrawny body. His skin is old, a blushing blue. Your fear of creative spiritual being begat the monster in your will. Knowledge bravery alone will overcome it. Behold the second beast. It bears its teeth in a warped face, scornfully it lies. Yellow with grey spots is its body. Your hate of spiritual revelation begat these weakling in your feeling. Your fire for knowledge must tame him. Behold the third beast with cloven muscles. Its eye is glassy posture sludging, dirty red its form appears to you. Your doubts in spirit light violence begat this ghost within your thinking. Your knowledge creation must make it yield. Only when you've defeated the three will wings brood upon your soul, the cross the abyss over, which separates you from the knowledge field, to which your heart longing desire, want to salvation seeking, consecrate itself. I will write this mantric word on the blackboard next time. When one has heard this directly from the mouth of the guardian, one may return remembering to the point of departure. There exists everything before the soul that all beings in our surroundings say, if we understand them correctly, what all beings in the most distant past already said to humanity, what all beings say to the humanity in the present, and what all beings will say to the human being in the future. O man, know yourself, so resounds the world word. You hear its all-powerful, you feel its spirit vastness. Who speaks so world-fastly, who speaks so felt-heartily? Does it act through space-distant radiation, in your senses being experience? Does it sound through time-wave weaves into your life's evolving stream? Is it you yourself who in space feeling, in experiencing time, creating the word, feeling foreign, sensing in space's emptiness of soul, because you have the force of thinking, losing in the time-destroying stream? These are the words of the Michael School. When they are spoken, Michael's spirit flows in waves through the rooms in which they are spoken, and his sign is what confirms his presence. Then Michael leads us to the real Rosenkreuzchen school, which shall reveal the secret of humanity in the past, in the present, in the future, through the Father God, the Son God, the Spirit God, and then pressing the seal on the words Quosae et crucis, the words may pronounce, ex Deo nascimur, in Christo morimur, per spiritum sanctum revivissimus. Accompanied to the sign of Michael's seal, which are for the first words ex Deo nascimur, secondly the words in Christo morimur, thirdly the words per spiritum sanctum revivissimus. As we say the word ex Deo nascimur, we feel them confirmed by the seal and sign of Michael. I esteem the Father. At the sign in Christo morimur, we feel I love the Son. At the sign per spiritum sanctum revivissimus, we feel I bind myself to the Spirit. That is what the signs are. Michael presents is confirmed by the seal and sign. Ex Deo nascimur, in Christo morimur, per spiritum sanctum revivissimus. Thank you very much. The Michael Imagination from this 28 September 1924. Arisen from powers of the sun, shining, world blessing, spiritual powers, for Michael's garment of rays, you are predestined by thought divine. He, the Christ Herald, revealeth in you, bearing mankind, holy world will, you the bride, either world beings, bear the Christ word to mankind. Then Michael appears, the Christ herald, in awaiting, thirsting souls, to them shall shine your enlightening word. In the spirit man world's time, you, the students of spirit knowledge, take Michael's wisdom beckoning, take the world's will, love, word, in the soul's high targets effective in. Die Michael-Imagination. Sonnenmächten entsprossene, leuchtende Welten begnadende, Geistesmächte zu Michaels Strahlenkleid, seid ihr vorbestimmt vom Götterdenken. Er, der Christusbote, weist in euch menschentragenden, heilgen Weltenwillen, ihr die hellen Ätherweltenwesen, trägt das Christuswort zum Menschen, so erscheint der Christuskünder, den erharrenden, durstenden Seelen, ihnen strahlet euer Leuchtewort, in des Geistes Menschen Weltenzeit. Ihr der Geist der Erkenntnis Schüler, nehmet mich als weises Winken, nehmt des Weltenwillens liebe Wort in der Seelen höhen Ziele wirksam auf. Thank you very much.